from lunch. Council, can we continue with? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. CEESAY, welcome back.
Thank you. With a background noise, though.
But can you?
Yes, I am.
Well, let's see how it goes.
It's out now and back again.
Perfect. Prior to the break, about what happened on the 14th of January at the police headquarters. When you testified about the IGP's address at 10 o'clock in the morning parade, during which the witch hunters, state guards, green boys and girls were present, as well as plainclothes military officers. You said that one of the IGP was that anyone identified as a potential witch would be taken to drink that would determine there was anything in particular to be of concern with. My question is, at that point, did the IGP tell you where individuals?
IGP said they were taken to Kotu at the witch doctor's bay, realized to be Baba Jobs.
So during 10 a.m., he did not mention who owned. He just mentioned it would be a compound in Kotu, correct?
Yes, he says at base. So he says at their base.
You mentioned that about 40 were identified as potential witches, including yourself. Is that correct? When Mr. Ken Mendy testified yesterday, he stated that his recollection is that there were probably just over 10 individuals who were identified.
Far more than that.
How are you able to recall the amount of people that were identified?
First of all, I was standing among them on the 14th. The next day, on the 15th, Thursday, at the master parade, RSM made an announcement. Everyone whose names were listed were to go to this place. The list was brought down and the names were called. I told him that I was not going. He said the truck was waiting outside, but I never. So the following day on Friday.
Before you move on to Friday, just still on the 15th, when you mentioned the RSM, you're referring to RSM Abdukoli, is that correct?
Abdukoli, that is right.
And the morning briefing would have been the usual briefing at 8 o'clock, or was the briefing held at another time?
Yes, the master parade at 8 a.m.
Master parade. You said that the names were called. Who called out the names on that day?
Ken Mendy called out the names.
And you said the RSM's instructions were that the truck was outside and people whose names were called should board the truck.
Yes.
Apart from,
after this,
before that, apart from the RSM, and you've mentioned Ken Mendy, for instance, was the IGP present on that day at the morning parade?
Not on Thursday.
And so when the RSM said that the truck was ready and that people should board the truck, the people whose names had been called out, you told him that you refused to do so. Did he say anything
yes, I
to
told
you?
him I wasn't going.
Did he say anything in response to what you said in your?
He said it was the IG who ordered it. I said, go and tell the IG. I said, I am not going. And later, I went to my office, and he came back there around 9 a.m. on Thursday morning and insisted that we should leave. I told him again to go and tell the IG that I, MUSTAPHA, said I wasn't going. Then some people left, others didn't go. Then on Friday morning...
Sorry again to interrupt you, Mr. CEESAY, I do apologize. On that 15th of January, apart from the second time that the RSM told you that you should go, which is the time he came to your office, were you asked to do anything else on that day?
No.
Were you asked to write a statement on that day, a personal statement?
No.
Please proceed to the next day. What happened on Friday, the 16th of January, 2009?
On Friday morning, as usual, when I came to office, I wrote a statement because I knew, because I refused, things are going apart. So I wrote my statement as to why I wasn't going to go, even before they asked me to. I left it in the computer and went to the morning parade. During this parade, the RSM, the IGP inquired if everybody had gone. Ken Mendy, an RSM colleague, informed him that not only a few people had gone. IG ordered Ken Mendy again to bring down the list and called everyone whose names were written down to stand aside. Everybody was called. Those who went, a few of them, had their names ticked out, and the IG took the list from Ken and started one by one and calling people to go and board the truck. When he reached me, I told him he can go and tell President Jammeh that MUSTAPHA says he's not going. He was angry about that. He next proceeded to Inspector Yaya Dabo. Inspector Dabo also told him that he was not going. Everybody else left, except me and Inspector Dabo. He came back to me and asked why I didn't go. I said it is satanic. I am not to worship Satan. And even if Sayyidina Abubakar was there, I was not going to do it. He asked me to go and write a statement why I refused President Jammeh's orders. Before I leave, he asked Inspector Dabo in my presence why he was not going. Inspector also said the same thing, that it was not part of his job as a police officer. Then we were both told to go and write our statements. Because I had my statement already in my computer in the office, I went and printed it out and signed it. But on my personal copy, because I made 2 copies, one for the IG and one for my file. If you look at the papers that I gave you, I had 15th January on it. I was in a rush coming down, so instead of writing 16th, I wrote 15th. I came down and handed the statement to the IGP. What I wrote in the statement was Suratul Fatiha, as well as one statement that I will not be involved in anything for which that I don't have knowledge. I surrender my affairs to my God. That is what I wrote there and gave it to him. When I gave him, he looked at it, passed it to Deputy IG Morgay, who also looked at it and told me, I think it is advisable for you to go. I said, I am not going. Then he gave it to RSM. The IG ordered RSM to have me charged and brought him, and brought before him for dismissal. I said, no problem. My father lived more than 80 years without stepping in the government office. I have my brothers working in the farms, so I'm not okay. I'm okay with being dismissed or being jailed or being killed, but I will not worship idol.
Thank you for that, Mr. CEESAY. I have provided a copy of your personal statement to the commissioners, and thank you for the clarification as to why it was dated 15th of January, 2009. You already told us what is in that statement, and we have a copy. In terms of your of the charges that were levied against you, you said that the IG told the RSM, that would be RSM Koli, to charge you and then bring you before the IG.
Yes.
Did that happen on the 16th of January 2009?
That is right. Immediately, the RSM marched me and ordered one sergeant who was a junior to me, is it Ali Juf, I think, he is in the registry, to go and write down my charge sheet. I was charged for disobedience to orders and discreditable conduct. In the charges, the charge was because I refused to go to Kotu, to Baba Job's compound, to be washed by the witch doctors, for which I have no reason to do. So it was a disobedience to orders.
In fact, before you proceed, Mr. CEESAY, we have a copy of the charge sheet, so it is better for us to read directly from it so that we're not paraphrasing. I will provide copies to the commissioners. Can you just confirm that it is the document that you provided to me via email, and it's titled the Gambia Police Force Charge Sheet?
Yes, it is this document here.
So I will read out what is stated in the document. It says unit, IT unit, police headquarters. It says rank, sergeant, name, Mustapha CEESAY, reg number 221, and it says charged with 2 counts. First count, it says disobedience to orders. Second count, discreditable conduct. It says, the writing is a little faint, so I will do my best to read it out, but correct me if I get anything wrong.
Right.
It says, being breach of the police disciplinary code as prescribed in the first schedule of the police rule, cap 18, volume 4, Count 1, Sergeant 221 MUSTAPHA CEESAY, for that you did on the 16th January 2009 at the police headquarters around the hours of 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. For you were given orders by the RSM to go to Kotu, for you to be washed. I'm reading it exactly as it is. For you to be washed by those marabouts that came to the police headquarters on the 14th of January 2009, which you refused to do without any excuse or permission. That's count 1.
That is the first count.
Count 2, Sergeant 221 MUSTAPHA CEESAY, for that you did on the same date, time and place, you acted in a manner that could tarnish the good image of the force by saying that you will not be washed. You did so without any lawful excuse or permission. It says the officer preferring the charge is ASP A. Kohli, in brackets RSM.
RSM, yes.
It also says witnesses, and under witnesses there's a number 1, but it's blank.
Yes, there were no witnesses.
And on the bottom right side of the document, it says, I believe that is file number.
No, it's force order number.
Force order number 03/09, and it's dated 27th of January 2009, and it is signed by someone with the registration number 791.
Sergeant 791.
Sergeant 791. Do you recall who that is?
That is Sergeant Ali Youth. That was the officer who wrote the charge sheet.
And in
On
fact,
this right corner, that is the endorsement. At the end of the process, on the 27th, after the IGP took my charge sheet, my charges, after he demoted me and transferred me to Fatoto, he ordered that it be published in the force order immediately.
but let's
because
still,
the force order publication was delayed.
Indeed, but let's first focus on this document because I want to make sure that we have all the information from it before we move on. After that, the second page states, plead not guilty, and it says found guilty.
Right.
And then it says count, presumably that's count 1, even though it doesn't say that.
The first one is count 1.
But directly underneath it says count 2.
Yes.
It says
the first one was count 1 read to the offender, plead not guilty, found guilty. Count 2, charge read to the defendant, plead not guilty, found guilty. Awarded. Referred to Commissioner of Operations for punishment.
order taken by, who is that? Whose signature?
It was Superintendent Madinding Fati. He was the officer commanding Human Rights Unit. Usually complaint and discipline.
And in fact, it does state on the document OC Human Rights.
Yes. So you can imagine if the Human Rights OC was the one who was taking this case. So what type of a right are we talking about?
After that, it also states charge read over to defaulter, and it says plea, not guilty on both counts, finding, found guilty on both counts. And again, it says awarded, referred to the Inspector General of Police for punishment. And there's a signature that looks like silver. Do you know whose signature that is?
Yes, this happened, there's a 2-week break The first one was on the 16th. When we went to the Commissioner of Operations, Pajalo was the commissioner. Pajalo said he was not going to get him involved. It's not Pajalo, it's Farmer Jalo. Commissioner Farmer Jalo was the Commissioner of Operations. He said he was not going to get involved. So it took 2 weeks. Nothing was done. So fast forward on the 27th. At the Pastor Parade, the IG came again and inquired why and what happened to my charge sheet. Because on that day I was standing right in front of him. He was told by RSM that they were waiting for Commissioner of Operations. He ordered that I be taken to him before the end of the day. That was Monday the 27th. When we were called, Pajalo said Farmer Jalo said he was not going to get involved. His assistant, Pa Silva, who was a chief superintendent at the time, decided to take the charges. He was the one who wrote that. He found me guilty on both counts and forwarded me to the IGP for punishment on the 27th of January.
Thank you for that explanation. That's very helpful. You then mentioned that there was a force order by the IGP in which you were demoted.
Yes.
You provided a copy of that document, so I will also provide it to the commissioners.
That is right.
And in the meantime, I will read out.
Is the police bulletin in which information is circulated, including promotions, demotions, disciplinary actions, transfers and postings, and all major information that needs to be forwarded and circulated to the force. It was supposed to be published on that Monday, the 27th. But because IG wanted to make sure my demotion took immediate effect, he ordered them to wait for its publication. After he dealt with my tax sheet, that was when it was published. So that my demotion, including my reduction in pay, can take immediate effect. That was what force order number 3, 2009, dated 27 January, minuted on the bottom of the charge sheet.
If we can look at paragraph 6, I believe it is, of that document.
Right.
That is where it lists the demotion.
Right.
And this would be page 4 of the 5-page document. It says Sergeant 221 MUSTAPHA CEESAY on the 16th January 2009, count 1, disobedience to orders, count 2, discreditable conduct, awarded demotion to the rank of first-class constable, and immediately transferred to Fatoto PIU, orders by IGP.
That is right.
Can you tell us on that day when you were taken before the IGP, before this force order was actually published, can you tell us about the conversation that you had with the IGP on that day?
In the morning master parade, the IG came there. Among other things, there was a lot of things that people talked about at the parade. So when he invited for questions, I raised my hand. But instead of allowing me to ask a question, he then concentrated on me as to why I was not brought before him. Because the president ordered that whoever refused to comply with those witch doctors should be fired. So he ordered the RSM that on all circumstances, I must be brought before him on that day.
So tell us what happened when you were brought. Tell us what happened when you were brought before him on that day.
Okay, before that, I was initially charged with Inspector Boja, Inspector Dabo, Yaya Dabo. We both went to the OC 30, where we had our charges forwarded to the this thing, how do I call him, the Commissioner of Operations. But later, Dabo's charges were dropped. So mine was the only one left. That was how I was taken to operations. After Farmer Jallo refused to take it, Paj Silva took the orders, and by 1:30, I was in the IG's office for orders. During this orderly room, I was escorted by Sergeant Ali Diouf, the one who wrote this charge sheet, and marked by RSM colleague, and the orders was attended by Ken Mendy. Ken Mendy was in the office at the time. He wanted to leave, and the IG asked him to wait. So he stayed all along the charges in the process.
Can you tell us,
that's what happened.
While you were there in the IGP's room during the process, do you recall what the IGP said to you?
Among others, he said I was stubborn, that I was not loyal to the president, and as far as he was the IGP, he was not going to condone that, because the president gave direct orders that anyone who refuses should be fired. But for some, I don't know why he refused to, he didn't fire me. He then decided to demote me. At the time, the first-class constable was the lowest rank in the police force. And Patoto, being the furthest, with PIU being the most challenging unit in the force, I was sent there as a punishment.
You told us that you were charged together with Mr. Yaya Dabo. Sorry, what was his rank at the time?
Yaya was an inspector.
So you were charged at the same time as Inspector Yaya Dabo, but at some point when you were referred to the Commander of Operations, the charges against Yaya Dabo were dropped. Do you know why?
Yes. Yes. Yaya told me he talked to some religious people to find out their advice, to seek their advice as to when you are forced to ascribe partners to God, what his faith is in Islam. And this particular religious person advised Yaya that because he was forced, it was okay, God would not hold him for that. So therefore he went there but he didn't do anything. He didn't even see anyone. He only pretended to go there. And when he came back, he told the RSM that he had gone. That was how his charges were done. But I knew that this was a wrong advice. Allah would not allow you to ascribe partners to him in any way, shape, or form. Being forced is no excuse to go close to Jalam and Satan.
Do you recall when Inspector Yaya Dabo told you this?
This was 2 days, Friday before it should be 24th, I think 24th of January.
So we know from the charge sheet that the reason why you were charged and found guilty of disobedience to orders as well as discreditable conduct was as a result of not being washed. That's exactly what the charge sheet said by the Marabous at that period in time. When you received your orders, when you received the IGP's orders saying that you had been demoted to the lowest possible rank and that you were being transferred to Fatoto, which is very far away, the last police post.
And they said with immediate effect.
With immediate effect. Can you tell us what impact this had on you and your family at the time?
This was one of the most devastating things on me and my family. Even though I had prepared ourselves psychologically for the worst, because I was expecting that I could be killed. So if I was just demoted and transferred to Fatoto, that was okay with me. But the fact that I was being associated with witchcraft or being forced to swear allegiance at a Satan shrine, those were very difficult. My family, including my mother, my wife and little children, my grandmother, and my extended family were also devastated. We all live in the Gambia, and being associated or accused of witchcraft or being a witch or anything relating to it is so stigmatizing. The family was stigmatized, I was stigmatized, but I personally didn't take it anything. I know it was okay. And when I went to Fatoto, I thank God and I thank a few officers. Among them, Officer Commanding Adlan Basange. Basange was the PIU commander at the time in Fatoto. He was spoken to by my friend Aziz Bojan that I was coming. He was informed of the circumstances and he agreed to support me in any form or shape. Sergeant Lamin Cham, who was also the second in command, was also very helpful among all the other junior officers I found there. Despite there were a few who talk about it, and that is normal, of course, I expect that. In any situation, some people may have questions. If he was not a witch, why didn't he agree to do what everybody did? That was not the point for me. Others, when they are pretending to do what they did, but why should I pretend? I am not a pretender. I didn't go through anybody to be a Gambian citizen. I'm a Gambian citizen by birth and by descent. I can be the president of the Gambia or any other position. So nobody will threaten me to do what I should not do.
Mr. CEESAY, you mentioned that during the process, when you were being charged, essentially, for against orders and discreditable conduct, you were still at the Banjul headquarters. So that would have been at least between the 15th of January until the 27th of January. Can you tell us during that time what you observed about the condition of any of the officers or men who went to Baba Job's compound in obedience to the orders to go there to be cleansed, as well as any information that you received about what happened at that compound? Hello, Mr. CEESAY. I believe it has frozen. The image has frozen. So the technicians, can you assist us to get the witness back? Hello, Mr. CEESAY.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Let me
We lost the connection.
Indeed, I can see that. Let me repeat my last question so that you can respond. Between the 15th of January and the 27th, you were still based at the police headquarters while this process was going on. The process of processing your charge and which eventually led to your demotion and transfer. During that period of time, can you tell us what you observed about the conditions of officers and men who went to Baba Job's compound, as well as any other information that they provided you about what happened there?
The few officers that I spoke to, especially those from my office, informed me that there were a lot of women and old men who were found at this place. Some were in a very, very dilapidated condition. I was told by one of them that they found July 22nd movement boys physically torturing these old women who were in their captivity, in their tents. They were captured against their will and being tortured for no reason. The day I saw Kumba Jata, because he had been there too, he was also dilapidated, very much embarrassed, and could hardly show his face outside his office. Not only for the humiliation of what happened to him, but he was virtually sick, as you can see him. I didn't speak to him because I was so much in sympathy with him. I couldn't talk to him. Seeing him, he was almost, I mean, it's difficult to look at him.
Was there anything in particular you noticed about his condition, something that changed from before? I know you've given a general description, but was there anything in particular that stood out for you?
Kumba, when he walks, Kumba is somebody who is straightforward. When he walks, he walks straight. But from that moment, I never saw Kumba walking. Every time he walks, you see his large energy, almost bending down, and I've observed this in him.
You said that some of the officers, the few that you spoke to, told you that there were July 22nd boys, movement boys who were at Baba Job's compound, who were physically torturing old women.
Yes.
Did they give you, did they provide you with any detail as to how this was being done?
They saw them beating them and pouring water on them and calling them Atol Mugwale. We're going to Malpala. I've seen that. I was told that they've seen that happen.
Sorry, can you repeat the words that you said and interpret them if necessary?
They had them telling those old women, Atol Mugwale means you people are witches. Mbal Palale means we're going to kill them. We're going to kill you. But they were pouring water on them.
Did the officers provide you with any other information about what happened at Baba Job's compound?
No, they didn't give me any further information, except for the general area. Too many dilapidated, somewhere in very, very bad shape, vomiting, and it's horrible to look at.
You mentioned Kumba Jata's condition when he came back. In terms of the other officers, anything about their condition?
There was one cleaner woman, something from there, but since then I've never seen him. I didn't recall her name now, but it's an old. But
Goes with being termed a witch or being suspected of being a witch. And you mentioned that the stigma affected you, but it affected your family even more. Can you give us some examples of how that stigma was manifested against members of your family?
A typical example is way down in 2010. My old daughter Fatumata, was being bullied by a lot of people children from school. On one occasion, she had to fight about 2-3 children. She came home crying that they were telling her, "Your father is a witch." She demanded answers. What will I be able to tell a 9-year-old that she will be able to understand? I make sure I did my best to explain to her, to let her know she's clean and we are clean and decent. We are noble, so she should not worry about it. Immediately, I arranged for her transfer from that school to another school. But as a result of that transfer, I had to move her back 2 classes down. She was supposed to go to the 4th grade. I had to move her to the 2nd grade because there was no place in the 4th or the 3rd grade. The only place she would have was the 2nd grade. This is very devastating. The primary reason, among others, why I decided to write my book. Even if something happens to me, there is a first-hand information with every possible what happened to their father and why.
Earlier in your testimony, you told us that after the incident at the headquarters, meaning what happened on the 14th of January, you continued to conduct further investigations into the activities of the witch hunters in the Gambia. Can you tell us more information about what you gathered in the course of your investigations, such as the areas where they operated and what they did in those areas?
Immediately I was moved to Patoto, but I still had contacts within the combo. I had that they were invading villages in Fonyi especially, and some villages in the combos, like Makumbaya, Talinding, and in Jambu, and Tempo, and in particular, so I see a cousin who lived also abducted, smart on them, to be sick. She dipped her finger into her throat and going out. This time, they have also went to by one of the PIU officers who used to be with me in Patoto. He came down to Bara on a leave, 3-day pass, and during his visit, he witnessed these people's invasion of Bara and SL. One officer, who was a sergeant in the police, I think it's called Omar Jahate, his father was abducted. When he wanted to defend his father, the soldiers beat him. I was given this information by one of our officers. It was the same day that Alagi Tabora was also abducted. During this time, I had information from Kiang from Gifara, where my mother came from, that a lot of people from Fonyi had to cross the river to flee these people. They were virtually emptying their villages, either to stay in the bush for the whole day, or cross to Kiang, or Casamance, those who have their family members in Combos relocated to their families there. It was so horrible for the country at the time. A witness also told me when they came to Talinding, the women at the market were seen throwing away their merchandise, including their oil, vegetables, fleeing for their life and their dignity. When I came down, this was around the end of March, around March 20, thereabout, I went to visit my grandmother. My grandmother's sibling, her older sister. On arrival, I saw her sitting down in the platform in the middle of the compound. As I parked the vehicle, I couldn't see her anymore. I went inside and found her in the back, attempting to climb a fence. This woman was 87 years old. My grandmother's next sister, older sister. She was crying and trembling. When I saw this, I immediately announced myself and rushed to her. She was trembling, she could not stand. I asked what happened. She could not speak. My cousin who was living with her told me that neighbors were threatening her that Yaya Jammeh's witch hunters were going to come for her because she's old and dilapidated. She said she would prefer to die than be labeled a witch after living all her life in a dignified way. This was very, very difficult for me. It was at this moment that I swore I was never going to wear a police uniform again. Because there I was, helpless, not only for what happened to myself, or my wife, or my children, or my mother, but my aging grandmother was there in a frightened manner that has never happened to her for 87 years. I couldn't help it. Above all, at the time that was going on, a detail of the PRU, the unit at which I was posted in, was assigned to these witch doctors. When they realized that before they go to villages away, they used to send this PRU detail there to surround the villages, and so villagers don't leave, so that they can abduct them and torture them, all in the name of fighting witchcraft. Yaya Jammeh's mother was alive at the time. They never gave her the concussion, and they were giving concussion to other people's bodies. This was wrong. I was not going to be part of a force or a unit that was being used not to support and protect the victims, but was giving VIP protection to the abductors of our people. It is not going to happen.
From what you've told us, the information you received was that these witch hunters went to various villages. I mean, you've mentioned Makumbaya, you've mentioned other places such as Sintet, you mentioned even Jambu, they went to Esso, they went to Bara, they even came to the Kombas, Talinding as well was mentioned. You also talked about, indeed, you also talked about the fact that this led to internal displacement as some people left their homes in order to seek refuge with their relatives in the Kombas, or just the fact that people had to flee into the bush during the day in order to avoid the witch hunters, and then come back at night, back to their homes. You mentioned individuals who would be at the market selling, so vegetable sellers who would then get rid of their produce as they were fleeing away from the witch hunters. So this really caused a lot of chaos.
And one thing I forgot to mention.
Please continue, yes.
The day I was leaving Patoto, I drove with my friend who was an accountant at the Ministry of Agriculture. He went to the province as a paymaster. His car's escort officer, Jaju, I cannot remember his first name. While coming down from, he informed me at that material moment, his father, his biological father, was bedridden at the RVH with both kidneys failed because of the concussion that he was forced to drink by these witch doctors. The boy and his family are from Makumbaya. His grandmother was a result of that, and he said his aunt was even raped by these green boys while she was intoxicated by these people. And subsequently, they kept raping her even when she was conscious. A lot of things happen in the Gambia for no reason.
Can you tell us the condition of the officer as he recounted all of this information to you?
Jaju was crying as he was mentioning this to me. He was so much devastated. He wanted to resign the post, but he feared what would have happened to him. Knowing his father could die at any time, with no hope of getting a job early, so somebody could victimize him for that. He was angry, helpless, and you couldn't just explain. I have a picture of him. It's because I didn't have his permission. I would have sent you his picture. You would have seen from his face how he was. He would have done anything to fight for the dignity of his family. But he was helpless.
You told us some of the human rights violations associated with the events that occurred, from people being abducted and taken away to drink these concoctions. You talked about hearing that some individuals were tortured by the Green Boys. You also mentioned that an example of actually raped while she was unconscious. Sorry?
Multiple times.
Multiple times. Are there any other, is there any other information you received about what was done to the individuals that were abducted?
The individuals abducted were being taken to two locations. Those around the combos here were being taken to Baba Job's home, and the rest in around Fonyi were taken to Kanilai. Apart from beating them, they were pouring water on them. While they crawl, they will hit them, kick them, insult, and every other humanizing acts were being done on them. This is all on top of being abducted and detained against their will. Stigma that is associated with being accused of being a witch in our society.
You mentioned that in the Combos and its environs, people were taken to Baba Job's compound. Do you know where that compound is located?
Baba Job had two compounds in Kotu Kololo area. I know these two compounds because I used to work in the PIU. When they were first confiscated from him, I was in the PIU in 2004. So they were being taken to his main compound, that is in Kololi, just after the, how do I call it, Palmarima Johnson. It's about 2 junctions after Palmarima. You take a left. It's about 500 meters from the, that's where the compound is.
And just to be clear, that would be going from Palmarima towards the Senegambia area, in that direction.
That is right.
And it's somewhere on the left, 2 junctions, and then about 400 or 500 meters in, from what you've said.
That is right.
You also mentioned that a second location where people who were abducted were taken to was Kanilai. Do you know where in Kanilai?
They were taken there, I don't know specifically the location in Kanilai, but that was their main base where many people were taken to. Because I've never been to Kanilai, and those I have information from would not give me the specific location due to the fact that I do not know anything about Kanilai, so I will not be able to give the specific details of the location.
And from what you in 2009, at the time, of course, Baba Job's home had been confiscated. Do you know who was in charge of, prior to the witch hunters making it their base, do you know who was in charge of the house or who had control of those assets?
Initially, Baba Job's compounds were taken from, were confiscated around June 2004. I was in the PIU at the time. This was when he was named in some armed drillings by the United Nations. So his compounds were confiscated. We used to go there to guard the compound, the 2 compounds. So since then, it was under the custody of the state. But when I left the PIU in 2004, the following month or so, I lost track of them. But I later learned that they were used for Yaya Jammeh's family members. At one point, his mother was living in one of the compounds.
You also provided information about the type of impact that some of these victims suffered as a result of drinking the concoction and just the conditions that they were in after they were abducted. You mentioned, for example, Officer Jaju's father, who fell ill after that, and 2 of his kidneys failed. Both kidneys failed.
Right.
Do you recall any other types of impact, either physically, medically, or psychologically, that you were informed of?
Yes, what I came to learn about the whole incident and the whole episode this has not been confirmed by me. But what I know with certainty, it was that they were given Kube Jaro. There is a specific plant in the Gambia. Many people from the provinces, young and the areas will know what it is. Kube Jaro is a very, very intoxicating plant. You drink a smallest part of it, you will be hallucinating, and it could have deadly impact on you. When these people are given this portion to drink, they become hallucinated and say things, see imaginary things that nobody could understand because they become intoxicated and lost their mind. This was confirmed, and it corroborates what the inspector said at the parade ground on the 14th of January, that one old woman said he hit the military truck with her head. That was what caused the accident to kill those soldiers. So if somebody can say a thing like that after being put into such a situation, and you ask him, what do you do to this particular person? He will say anything. One of the victims was said to have said that he had killed his own son, who was alive at the time. Because they were being told that you are a witch, who and who do you kill? While they were being tortured, forced to make confessions. In their hallucination, they will say anything just to get away.
You also mentioned the stigma of being called a witch, particularly in the Gambian context. Can you explain a little bit more about that so that people can better understand the stigma that's attached to it?
Witchcraft is one of the worst things that could happen to any family. Because in as much as it is shown and religion does not believe in it, but our society have it long in our history. Nobody has ever it. Nobody has ever seen it, but for some reason, we believe in it. If you are being a witch, nobody will get close to you. 99% of the time, the people who are accused of being witches are old, lonely, poor people who have no one to defend them. Those are the type of people that they accuse in our communities of this person is a witch. Either the person doesn't have any child, or his children are dead, especially at their early age, or something like that. People will just create a story, this person is a witch. They don't say it openly, but among each other, once people accuse a family of being a witch, that family is completely stigmatized. In many occasions, you hardly find people who will get married, intermarry with that family because they are witches, even though nobody saw it. That is one of the things. Wherever the person goes to, people will try to run away from them. It is very, very difficult. In a country like the Gambia, where we depend entirely on our community and our social connections, if you will be associated with something that will make you lonely, isolated, without help, especially when you are already a lonely person. It is very, very difficult. I know it because I live it.
During the course of your investigations, as you tried to gather more information about the activities of the witch hunters in Gambia, in various regions, were you able to have an idea of the scope of the victimization? Do you know, for example, roughly how many people suffered similar fates, what you've explained, being abducted, detained, given concoctions to drink? Do you have an idea of whether we're talking about hundreds, thousands? Do you have any idea at all?
In all, if you will put it together, it will be in the thousands cancelled. Because police headquarters alone, imagine 40 people. When they go to Patoto, Sintet, according to my cousin, a bus full was from there. So Jambur alone had 60 people. I sent you the picture of the bus that they use. When they go to the village, whoever is old and lonely, or whoever they can meet, they will take them. Imagine in Jambur, the youngest person that they took out of the 60 people was 45 years old. Logically, if there are old witches, won't there be young witches too? Why will you have the youngest witch in Jambur to be 40? So it means there was nothing going. You just go into these villages, randomly pick people, go and humiliate them. The information that I later got around 2010, even though I did not confirm this, so I don't want to, that's why I didn't put it in my statement, but it's worth putting it out here. If it is further investigated to be true, then that's perfect. If it is not, then I assume it is just from my source that must have missed it. Yaya Jammeh at the time was understood to be involved in drugs. The reason why this witch hunting happened, they were only using this name witch as a cover-up. He was involved with South American drug cartels. We understand cocaine and heroin were being produced from a poppy from either Afghanistan or somewhere else. Yaya Jammeh, in his whatever nature, wanted to prove to them that Gambia has something that was more effective for drugs than poppy. That was why they were using Kube Jaro to sample people as they are piggies. I got this information around 2010. I would not disclose the source because I cannot remember fully 100% who he was. But this was when I was working with the British Embassy, when the British special agents came here to the Gambia, when those 2 tons of cocaine were discovered. This was the time I got this information, that they were trying to see if the Kube Jaro could be used as a drug as well. Like I said, I couldn't remember the source of this information, but it was there even though it was very confidential.
Thank you very much for that information, Mr. CEESAY. We will, of course, continue with our investigations to look into this issue of human experiments being conducted with the purpose of determining whether or not Kubejero was more effective than other drugs such as cocaine. You mentioned that during your investigations you found another reason that you found was that Yahya Jammeh had brought in these witch hunters from Guinea-Conakry because his aunt had died, as well as 2 personal bodyguards, and so this was, in a way, in response to that incident. Is that also correct?
Right. That is right.
Following everything that you have told us here today, you said that there was a unit of the PIU that was responsible for surrounding villages and preventing villagers from running away before the witch hunters arrived in those villages.
That is right.
You said as a result of this and other information, you decided to resign from the Gambia Police Force. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you provided your certificate of discharge. Do you recall when you left the Gambia Police Force?
I resigned from the Gambia Police Force on March 31st, 2009. Technically, that was when my 5-year ended. But because the Inspector General of the police at the time wanted to have me hooked, for some reason, he decided not to approve my discharge, because once I don't have an approval for my discharge, so it means technically I could be charged for absconding. It took him 5 months before I could get my discharge certificate. Also prevent me from getting a job, but thank God, by June, I had a job with the British Embassy. That was how I was saved. Otherwise, I was going to be arrested, because he even gave orders to Bakari Sane, who was the OCPIU at the time, to have me charged for absconding.
But did this not, that did not materialize, is that right?
No, Bakari Sane didn't act on the orders.
According to your discharge certificate, it states that it was finally signed on the 31st of August 2009. And in terms of your record as an officer, it states that your conduct was very good. And it talks about, it's essentially an assessment, an appraisal of how you were as a police officer. And included there is, he was neat, punctual, obedient, and dedicated to his work. He held various responsibilities and always willing to share his great ideas with his subordinates. Provide commissioners so that they have an idea of when this took place, as well as at least the assessment of the Gambia Police Force in relation to your time with the police force. After you left the force and then you started working at the British Embassy, at some point you decided to leave the Gambia altogether. Can you just tell us about what led you to leave the country finally, as well as the impact that all of this has had on you and your family?
Initially, I never wanted to leave the country. I would stay on and fight on. Even though there was imminent danger on my life. My telephone was tapped. Immediately, I left the headquarters. I was being followed after I left the police on so many occasions. I was being followed by unknown people who want to stop me and have me abducted, but I have developed my own security tactics, which, thanks to God, they worked. I do not go anywhere. If I have to go away anywhere, I make sure I am never alone. If I am at any uncomfortable place on my own, I will make sure I pretend to be on the phone while I walk. If I see somebody following me, I'll pretend that I'm talking to somebody and tell him that I'll call you. There are things I want to tell you, but I cannot tell you because there is somebody following me right now. So if I reach home, I will talk to you in detail. That way, whoever is following me knows that his presence near me is being noticed and told to someone else. So that way I make sure I save myself. But on one occasion, in 2011, I was coming from the University of the Gambia with my friend CD Party. We were in a commercial vehicle. In a conversation, an unknown man who was identified as an NIA officer got involved in our conversation and started intimidating and harassing me and told me that I was a traitor and they were following me. I got information that I was giving the British Embassy and they were following me. If they should lay hand on me, I will regret why I was born. But none of these were worrying to me, because death will only come when it is time. But what changed events was on the 3rd of June 2012, while at home, I was with my colleagues and my grandfather's students in Cambridge. Yaya Jame's brother, I think it's Araba Jame, something like that. I don't remember the name fully. He was being driven from Canada. They were driving at breakneck speed. When they reached Cambridge in the evening, they knocked my grandfather's student and killed him on the spot. Usman Jame was 19. He was killed on the spot. I was there on the scene. The next day at his burial, on the 4th, I think, of June, during the burial, Yaya Jammeh sent a delegation. It included Lamin Sane, who was the former Commissioner of Western Region, the former Paramount Chief Demba Sanyang, this current Sidinjai, Dahaba, this Simbojang, I don't know what's his name again, Yaya Jammeh's cousin who was in charge of Kanilai Farms. I cannot remember his full name, but something Bojang, he was responsible for Kanilai Farm, were among the delegation. $20,000, some bags of rice, and some oil, as Yaya Jammeh's condolence to my grandfather. After the burial in Cambodia, in my grandfather's house, I addressed them to go and tell Yaya Jammeh that his drivers and his convoys, his officers, were killing our people on the road. My brother's son, who was just 6 years old, was knocked down in Lamen, at the NTC in Lamen, on May 30th, 2011. The Mauritanian president was coming here. They were taken from the school to go and welcome. Yaya Jammeh was throwing biscuits, and the drivers were running at reckless pace. These children were run over by one of Yaya Jammeh's vehicles in the convoy. There were 4, 3 of them died. My brother's son, Mohamed CEESAY, had his leg fractured. They spent 3 months at the RVH. We later took him and cured him through local means. When the wife, the mother of the son, Ndeye Dramé, told the driver at the hospital, because the driver used to come there to visit them, asked him why they were doing that. The driver told her rather, was when such accidents happen, they only report it to the president, and that's all they know about it. 2011, during the presidential election, a similar thing happened in Busumbala. About 8 people were killed when he was throwing biscuits to children. His vehicles ran into them and killed about 8 people in Busumbala. That does not include the students that were being randomly killed either by the convoy or by the soldiers that fled Kadilai to Combo. I told them that was unacceptable. We as Gambians, we have to live in the Gambia. We have our children going to school. We have to go look for our survivors. If we are being killed on the road, and Yaya Jammeh trying to send in ransoms of $20,000, it is not going to work. While I was addressing them, because I know them, I know the trick, I recorded my speech and immediately secured it, just in case if anything happens as a result. After that, they were very, very offended, and they intensified their intimidation and attempts to have me arrested. My family was very uncomfortable and feared for my life, and they decided that I have to leave. Because I was having a US visa at the time, I was having a valid visa for more than 1 year, I didn't want to leave the country. But because my family wanted me to leave, I had no option, but I had to save myself, to preserve myself for them. That was why I left the country in 2012.
And if you can, last question, if you can very briefly just tell us the impact that this has had on you and your family, and then I will hand over to the commissioners for additional questions.
The impact that this had on my family is not measurable. My mother had been living in pain since that day to date. Having left her, now she is at home alone with my second wife. who I married in 2009. He was the late brother. I took her with the rest of the children. She couldn't be here. I leave her behind. This is not good. My entire family had been crying. Not only because of my absence, but the continued stigmatization we suffer of being associated and labeled as witches. I came from a decent family, thank God. Over 500 years, my compound in Canton Kunda are the imams. My mother's compound in Giparo are the imams. My father's mother's compound in Keneba are the imams. We are known for our service and contribution to humanity. To look at me and associate me with anything that is ungodly and stigmatizing as being a witch is unforgivable. Nonetheless, I had forgiven Jesus. It was not his making. He was just like any other Gambian who, because of greed and fear, wanted to secure their position. The only misstep that he had was taking it to the next level. So I have forgiven him. The only person I could not forgive forever is Yaya Jammeh. Not because of myself, because he forced so many people to swear at an idol to be a president. Some of them have died. Some of them he has demons, destroyed their dunya and akhirah. They are in hell right now, thanks to Yaya Jammeh. I cannot forgive such a person. Otherwise, I have forgiven everybody else.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEESAY, and thank you very much for spending this whole time with the Commission. I understand, of course, the time difference meant you started from 4 a.m., your testimony, and being available at least an hour before in order to test the system. So thank you for your patience, and thank you very much for your testimony. I have concluded. Mr. Chairman, I hand over to you and the Commissioners for additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma Council. What's money? Mr. CEESAY, thank you very much indeed for sharing your pain with us. This is not an easy thing, both for you and your family. The time that you have taken also, the time that you have spent with us, preparing to give this testimony, and the time today, really thank you enormously. It's not an easy experience that you have gone through. Very painful indeed. There was just one point in your testimony that left me completely bewildered. Even if the Kubejara in the Gambia is more potent in Afghanistan or the high mountains of Bolivia and Colombia in South America, what is it in the world that would make a government allow its country, turn its country into a guinea pig for drugs? Absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, thank you again so much, Emma, for your testimony. Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate.
One point, Mr. Chairman. Point of correction. It was not the Gambia government. We must make a distinction here. Yaya Jammeh was using the system for his own interest. It was completely independent of the Gambia government. The government machinery, except those that he used to do his debt in, know nothing about what he was doing and what he was about. It was Yaya Jammeh and Yaya Jammeh alone.
I agree with you very much indeed for that. But he was the one who the rest of the world saw as some representative of the government. That's why I use it in that sense. But I completely agree with you. The government, the country was hijacked. What we have been hearing is, in this commission is just unpardonable. But the government and the country were hijacked. He was president of the country. He was dealing with international partners in that capacity. If he was a private person, a gangster, nobody's going to deal with him. But he was president of the country. He used the instrumentalities of the state to pursue these outrageous things here. Rape in the State House, the national house of the country. You have Kamal going on, and you are raping somebody in that State House.
You're right.
But that's what it is, yes. Sorry, I agree with you, yes indeed. Maybe not the government and not the people. The Gambian people weren't the ones allowing the country to be used as a guinea pig for drugs. Commissioner Carr, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Namesake, Mustafa, I'm sorry for what happened to you. I have two questions I want to ask you. The first is, how were you able to rebuild your life?
It had been very difficult. I call it a life in transition. This events of 14th January 2009, I call it the beginning of an end and the beginning of a beginning. I was almost settling down into a job that I love very well, with every potential that I'm looking for in life. Having been diverted into the unknown, living in constant fear of how secured I am was the daily question in my mind. It had been very difficult. Despite having a lucrative job at the British Embassy as the Human Resource Administrator, I was never a safe person. My life was constantly under intimidation, surveillance, with uncertainty of not knowing the next. Until I left the Gambia, there was never a day I was sure that I was not going to be arrested and abducted. After leaving the country, struggling to settle down as an immigrant had been the most difficult thing that you can imagine. Having it on my way, I was not going to be here right now under the temperature of -20 Celsius when I could have been serving the Gambia. Whatever I do here in the United States, of course, adds value, but will never be like when I'm in the Gambia. Although I have part of my family here with me, the most important ones as well, like my mother, are for the past 7 years, almost 8 years, I am only able to go back once for a very short period. That is not what I want to live my life. So I have been alive in transition. That is the answer.
The second question is, are you able to gauge how the witch hunting exercise impacted the police as a whole? What impact did it have, especially on the morale of the police force?
Ever since the police force had been created in this country, this was the worst that it had ever dealt with. Nothing like this has happened to the police, although individual officers had been victimized, but for the entire institution to be brought down to such a degrading situation by total strangers couldn't be fathomed. Until today, the police couldn't gain its dignity for what it had gone through. There were officers, hundreds of them, who were willing to put their life to protect their dignity and the profession, but they could not because of fear of what is potentially going to happen to them. The police had been badly demoralized, and until today we couldn't make that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Maybe there are no. Oh, yes, Ma'am Yala, you have the floor, please.
Witness, I am very much moved by your statements, particularly the quotations you have made about being guided rightly and not doing wrong at any one time. I am sure it is this principle that has led your life to the position in which you are today. But the armed forces of the Gambia, how did it happen that this one man was able to control and rule everybody's mind to the point that he was doing all these evil things and nobody could do a thing about it? Can you dilate, please?
Thank you, Commissioner. How Yaya Jammeh succeeded are twofold. Remember, Allah said in the Quran, Innal muluka ijadaka qaryatan afsaduha wa jalu aijat ahlaha azillata wa kadhalika yafalun. This is what God said. When evil leaders come, they destroy the town. Those who are dignified are the ones that they destroy. This is what Yaya Jammeh succeeded in doing. He made so he controlled the power to harm you if you are not in his line, and to reward you if you want to do things for him. In the Gambian context, I have my pay slips here. From 1997 to 2009, when I left the police, I never threw a single pay slip. Imagine a police officer being paid $1,000 with no other job available, having a family of 5 or 10 to feed. Why will he lose his job for something that he would not be able to stop even if he does not comply? People have been enslaved by their families' needs. Although there are few, very few, who went the excess because of greed to do excess to others, but the majority of us had been in this situation because we are individuals. We have never since 1954, built the Gambia. We built individuals. We have never been a community of people where we will stand for each other. It's one for one. That is the reason that I'm asking.
Thank you very much indeed. If you have any closing remarks to make, Mr. CEESAY, you may proceed to do so now.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I know it is your time to leave now, but I will seek your permission to give me time to address the Gambian and the security forces on something that is important. I've been waiting for 10 years for this opportunity. It never happened. Today is the day. Please allow me to do that. First of all, I want to take you and the citizens of the Gambia on the life of a police officer. The police are not as what we see them. The police are more of a victim than aggressors. I will give you examples. I mentioned the IGP Tatin Baji. I was among the investigators who investigated the state of the Hydra. IGP Tatin Baji at the time did everything to make sure he lay hand on the people who featured prominently in the investigation. It was as a result of that determination, he was arrested in his house at 3 a.m., detained in Mile 2 for 5 days, and dismissed after over 30 years of service. Usman Sonko, who never served even in the military police, was brought into the police. Officers are being humiliated, tortured, killed, and when you die, for example, on the line of duty, nothing happens. I have series of examples. As recent as December 2016, Barika Conte was a fire officer. They were fighting fire at around Kotu, somewhere around there. A wall fell, and he got trapped in the fire. He was burnt down. His left part was already charged. He was taken to the hospital. He died after 4 months. What happened to his family? Nothing. Corporal Alaji Barrow was on duty at Somita police station. While at a checkpoint, he was hit by a truck, dragged for 75 meters. His body was completely destroyed. When he died, what did the police give him? $5,000 as compensation for his family. Jam Korka and this officer Fadera were escorting Sadauda Kairaba Jawara. They were killed in an accident. What happened to their families? Nothing. The list goes on. Yamundao Jan is a chief superintendent of police. While on peacekeeping in Darfur, she was shot. He was evacuated to Banjul, spent months at the RBH. The police didn't do anything about it. They couldn't even follow up to make sure the United Nations compensate Yamundao. Since 2010, Yamundao has been living in pain, struggling to get medication and treatment, still to no avail. My own brother, Lamin, who is a sergeant in the police right now, in 2009, was involved in an accident with 27 other officers while they were driving in a police truck going on official mission to Basse. After the accident, he was given only 3 paracetamol. Until today, nobody cares about what happens to him. He is still having a disability. Tijan Baji, late May Alexander, was my personal friend. He was instructed to prosecute the current vice president and the director of press when they were in the Gamma trap. Because there was no offense, he couldn't secure a conviction for them. Tijan was arrested, dismissed, and detained for months, later dismissed. He was brought back to police. After he left the country, since 2013, when he left, he was struggling to get his gratuities. He died last June. Until today, he couldn't get his gratuity. Pajalo was a commissioner of police. His only crime was he was related to Alaji Yorojalo of independent newspaper. No amount of intimidation and harassment was meted on him. He was abandoned. His juniors were promoted over him. Aziz Bojang was a friend. He was fired for months. Until today, nobody told him what happened. He was only reinstated months later. The current Deputy Inspector General of Police had the same fate. The Gambia Police Force, every peacekeeper is contributing 10% of their MSA to the police. Who knows where that money is going to? They cannot use that money to care for their officers. It was, they said, was going to President Jammeh. But Jammeh left the Gambia since 2017. They're still paying that money. Where is it going to? In hard currency, US dollars from their MSA. Somebody has to talk about it. Until this moment, Mr. Chairman, the police are being used by politicians and those in position for their own selfish interest. A typical situation in mind is the Faraba incident. We all know what happened to Faraba. The Faraba people were being deprived from their livelihood and given to one businessman. All they were crying for is for them to be given back their place where they can farm to get their survival. Instead of using the common sense and resolve that matter, you send PIU officers there as authority. The villagers saw them as an intimidation, as belligerent forces. They were attacked. On the first occasion, one officer was pelted with a kamprawa. I don't know how they call it in English. He broke his teeth. The police didn't do anything about it. They should not have sent them there. They should have recalled them. They should have used dialogue to resolve the issue. They refused to do that. The officers were attacked. More than 25 officers were injured in that incident. Some were victimized, including ASP party. When they use all their resources, all their training, lives lost as a result of it. Now they are charged for murder and manslaughter. This is not right. The police leadership sent them to Faraba. They gave them orders by the fact of deploying them there. When they were attacked, they had to defend themselves, even if they cannot keep the peace. Now they are going to trial, charged for murder and manslaughter. When you gave them an AK-47 and a live round, and they are not trained as marksmen who will be able to shoot at the knee and below. During that encounter, their place was burned down, more than 25 were injured, including hospitalization. As a result, lives were lost. The IG will say he didn't give them orders. By the virtue of sending them to Paraba, you gave them orders to go there. When incidents happen, they have to respond. If they were properly trained in de-escalation, they would have been able to retreat. Or at least if there were proper intelligence, they would have been able to act and prevent the trucks from going to the quarry, thereby quelling the incident. But they were not supported. They had no leadership. They had no direction. They were left on their own. For the first time in some of their careers, in a volatile situation where they were attacked and injured by an entire village. What I want to tell Gambians, the police are not your enemy. We are suffering anything that you are suffering in that country. The underdevelopment, everything else, we are suffering it equally. I have my paychecks here from 1997 to 2009. My last pay in police in March 2009 was $1,729. What is that going to do for an officer who has a wife, 3 children, a mother, and has to go to work? What should happen? We should come together as a country. Yaya Jammeh divided us and use the security divided separate from the community. This government should come together and fill that gap. While all these challenges are going on, some members of our community demonize our police officers. We are not demons. We are mere victims of exactly what everybody is going through, Mr. Chairman. It is now becoming a modus operandi in that country that citizens get up and go and attack police stations in the name of venting their anger. This is not right. I was in the uniform in 2000, leading to the April 2000 protest. We in the fire service could not even wear our uniforms outside because we will be attacked. We put our uniforms in bags, only wear them at the station. During the April 2000 incident, Binta Kinta was a fire officer. Jabundur was a fire officer at Porto. Petrol was poured on them, they were going to be burned down. Only God saved them. Our bitter petrol was poured on her. She was going to be burned down. Only God saved her. Until last week, we had people going to attack a police station in the name of they are angry. If you attack the police, you want to intimidate them. The citizens will lose confidence in them. There is going to be anarchy in the country. No one is going to be the winner. Alin kana Gambia police or security Kenya.
Let's not make members of the police force our enemies. They are working for the people of the country. Members of the security forces of the Gambia are not your enemies. These are your husbands, your wives, your brothers, your uncles. You go to funerals together. You go to the same mosques. When they leave the police force, you share the neighborhood with them. Do not make them your enemies. But I want to say to Gambians, listen carefully. Our peace, let us not fire it with our gun. No matter how things may be. Let's remove it by law and with common sense.
We have a democratic way of changing our government.
Everything has its own way. In the Gambia, we have a way of changing government, which is through the democratic process.
If we don't support the current government, follow due process. If Adama Barrow's promised 3 years, he chooses not to resign, wait for him at the polls. Don't come out and try to destabilize our country by telling us we do not intend to do anything that is going to be harmful. How many people will use your coming out? What is happening in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Yemen? We are not following due process. If you believe he is wrong, wait for him at the election. Remove him through the election. If he loses the election, he is going to get out. If he still wants to remain until 2021, he has the constitutional right to do so. Your right to protest does not deprive him of his right to rule until 2021. Before then, our country is not going to go into chaos because you don't want him to be there.
Have pity for the women folk. The place they have on their heads, moving around markets and garages to get something for their family. The women that are in the gardens,
they don't have anything.
They walk on dry land, using their energy so that they could get something to feed their families. Have sympathy for these women.
Have sympathy for the young people. 2007 impact Ngajele. 150,000 displaced persons. 50,000 refugees. There was not a single gunshot fire. How do you guarantee that if 20, 30, 40 people come out, forcing the president out, that is not going to bring violence in our country? Gambia is not like any other country. If there is a gunshot in the morning, there is not going to be any food. 90% of the Gambians, especially in the rural, in the urban areas, don't have water in their homes. What happens if that source of water is closed down? As we are talking, even the police said that's supposed to manage internal crisis. If the water is shut down, they cannot maintain command of any situation more than 1 hour because they have no water. That is what I'm telling you. And to the Gambian government and those in charge of our security, let me tell you this. in order to manage the police, we have our police through policing through policies. There must be a national policy that is at the strategic level that directs how the internal security is to go. The police itself should have its tactical way of doing things. We must have our policies, we must have our procedures, we must have our standards, and we must be able to do these things in a way that are compatible with democratic policy. We cannot continue to do things as they are. Mr. Chairman, our country do not have people who have the right mindset and the right competence leading our security entities. This is the fact. We have to decolonize our police force now and align it with our current situation. That is what we have to do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, what I wanted to say, most importantly, I want to tell the politicians and the government that they must stop politicizing our security forces. The security forces had been used bad by Yahya Jammeh. This must stop. In order to rebuild our police force, Mr. Chairman, our police must be responsive, they must be accountable, and they must be representative. In order to do this, our consent and our powers to do our job must be derived from the common interest of the citizenry and not the whims and caprices of the government and the elected few. This is what I have to tell you. In order for the police to do it right, the governance system itself must be free from nepotism. Appoint people based on merit and not based on who supports you. That is what I have to tell you. Commissioner, Chairman, I want to ask your forgiveness. I know I took too much of your time, but I have to say this. The government must do something and know that the peacekeepers cannot secure the Gambia. It is the Gambian security that must secure the country. Get close to the security and localize the security for the Gambian people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. CEESAY, for those remarks. Indeed, we were the ones who took your time as well, but I hope we have given you enough opportunity that you've been waiting for years to make these remarks. But thank you again for your testimony, and sorry you had to get up very early in the morning in very cold Wisconsin. We are going to close our meeting for today, and tomorrow morning we meet again at 10 o'clock sharp. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.